to the education reform, which of course is also topical, having seen the vote go through yesterday. Generally, it'd be great to hear your views on this particular education reform and the movement towards reform, in fact, on a general level in Europe. How you see that, what the consequences that might bring for the next generation, and whether this is the right sort of move that...
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the most dramatic thing going on at the moment that we're aware of really is from the UK level. And I'm finding it really difficult to square this idea that what you want is a really highly skilled, knowledge-based economy. You want maximising of people's educational potential, that this is the future direction. And then you put barriers in the way of delivering that by saying to people, well, but if you do that, you're going to carry this enormous load of debt. You know, we want this for society's benefit, but it's an individual risk. And the amount of debt that you are asking people to carry is just horrendous, because people are focusing obviously on the tuition fees, but it's not just the tuition fees, it's how do you live while you're also studying. And you know, particularly if as well you're in a degree course which is going to be longer than 3 years, you know, if you're doing medicine or whatever, you know, people are just going to look at that and think, I'm going to be paying this for the rest of my life. Is that really what I want? I'll do something else. And one of the things that's quite interesting is the number of questions that are now being asked by people looking at whether or not they're going to university about what are the arrangements for studying elsewhere in the European Union. And so I think people, in a bizarre way, this may actually push a more European dimension. But the focus too has been very much on the university sector. But there's that whole other sector of, you know, the sort of the educational range, which is dealing more with vocational pre-university stuff. They are funding cut. The educational maintenance money going is going to have a real impact on there. So this isn't just about high school universities, it's about the whole level of skills and people's futures that this government is messing with.
So, I think we've seen just sort of, certainly there's been a lot of protest in the UK, and that's obviously extended on a European level. We've seen protests in Italy, in France, less perhaps on the education side of things, but lots of young people out on the streets for the pension reform, which is quite interesting. I just wondered whether you see that as being almost a general sort of radicalisation of youth, and people have talked about this return to 1968.
I would, well, I mean, it would be tragic if it were a return to 1968, because that would mean you didn't have much of a legacy from 68, which would make you wonder why you want to do it again. You know, but I do think that there's this feeling of people sort of, I don't know, responding to a real insecurity. But, you know, this is a generation that really was coming through that was assuming that, you know, pensions would be there, education would be there, and suddenly all of that has been thrown into uncertainty. So I think it's not at all surprising that you're seeing people on the street saying, you know, what is happening here? You know, guarantee is the future. And the climate change dimension of it plays into it as well. It's a more insecure world in all sorts of ways. So I don't think it's at all surprising. I think the challenge now is with people sort of within politics, within policy development, to really try and look at how do we provide that sort of reassurance. And I think that means a question of a lot of the assumptions that we've had about where progress comes from.
I mean, in particular on the protests in the London context, there's been quite a lot of criticism of the way that the police have dealt with protesters in themselves individually. And I know colleagues from the Green Party, Caroline Lucas, and some of the London councillors have been quite vocal in the House of Commons and in general about that. Is this something that you think that you'll carry forward, and is a particular priority to the Green Party?
I mean, it's certainly the issue about policing and quality of policing and relationship police with the general public is a very big priority for the Greens. I mean, Jenny Jones on London Assembly is on the Metropolitan Police Authority. You know, and is staying there because she feels, you know, her role is almost as a voice for the people who are on the receiving end of, you know, whether it's kettling, whatever other tactics it is. So, it's important for us because, again, it's this issue about, you know, the balance within society and the right to protest. The right to protest, mind you, without violence. Yeah. I mean, and I think that this is something else which, you know, we want to try and bring to the debate, is that if you can get front pages by smashing windows, you don't necessarily get political change that way.